to another stupendous episode of the best show on the internet, the Sharon Show. We have an excellent connection. That's great. Thank you, YouTube. Welcome back, everybody. We are here. We're excited. We're on a journey. We're closing a chapter in the Sharon book, which is the Tao. We're here to finish the Tao today, so stay tuned for that. But as always, we're going to go into the verse. We're going to go into the quote from today, and today is a quote that is about the Tao from Alan Watts, who is somebody I believe that really, understood a lot about the Tao and studied it in his life. Today's quote: "The art of life is more like navigation than warfare. For what is," and I'm going to add some words here to make it make
Commentary
sense, kind
throughout.
of, yeah, because it didn't. For what is important is to understand that the winds, the tides, the currents, the seasons, and the principles of growth and decay. Is to understand. Sorry, though, is to understand the winds. I'm trying to think of how I was reading it earlier. Or anyway, I'm going to start from the beginning again. Hey, everybody, how's it going? The art of life is more like navigation than warfare. And so what he's saying is, for what is important is to understand the winds, the tides, the currents, the seasons, and the principles of growth and decay, so that one's actions may use them and not fight, or so that one's actions may use them and not fight them. Okay,
You want me
yeah.
to read it?
Yeah, maybe you should. You know what? Sharon's gonna read the quote today, everybody. I mean, when I was reading it earlier, I must have, I don't know what I
Confusing
did.
you?
Go ahead, you read it. I'm silly.
It's okay. All right. Alan Watts says the art of life is more like navigation than warfare. For what is important is to understand the winds, the tides, the currents, the seasons, and the principles of growth and decay, so that one's actions may use them and not fight them.
There we go.
And so what we're using is the winds, the tides, the currents, the seasons, the principles of growth and decay. Instead of fighting these things, instead of fighting the winds, instead of fighting the tides and the currents and the seasons and the principle, you know, you know, there are people who point out all the things that are going wrong right now in this world. And I understand the need for pointing it out and the aggravation and the getting upset about it. I get it because I do too. But this is a wise quote, because Wu Wei, Wei Wu Wei is a better way of doing this, and that is this navigation, this just being, right, rather than fighting it.
100%. It's more like just kind of accepting things as they come and going with the flow instead of having your own preconceived notions about what's going to happen. There was another quote I came across, but it was way too long, and it was just a parable that Alan Watts was reading, and like, there's this guy. Actually, I'll pull it up, but I'll just paraphrase it instead of reading the whole thing
Okay.
because it does. Just reading it doesn't make sense.
All right. Well, you pull it up. Can I ask you? You said this quote from Ellen Watts was about the Tao, or
What
did
I
you
did
just
was
say that because?
I searched Alan Watts quotes about the Tao, and this
Oh,
is one that came up. So he didn't reference it specifically,
okay.
but the way that he I think the meaning of the quote is very Tao like.
Yes, it's very Tao.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oops. Ah, two cards fell out, dude. Should I just keep them?
Nice. Yeah.
All right.
And so I'll read this real quick while you get that together. So basically it said that the in the evening the neighbors gathered to commiserate with this guy um because his horse ran away, and he's like, "Oh, such bad luck." And the guy was like, "Maybe." And the next day the horse came back with six wild horses, and everyone was like, "Wow, this is great, isn't this good luck?" And the guy was like, "Maybe." And the next day, his
I've
son
heard
felt,
this. I've heard this somewhere, but go ahead.
yeah, the next day, his son was riding one of the wild horses and fell off and broke his leg. And everyone's like, oh, look at this bad misfortune. Isn't this bad? And the guy's like, maybe.
Maybe.
And the next day, these foreign army came to conscript all the men or the
Mhm.
young boys or whatever of that age into the army, but they couldn't take him because his leg was broken. And they're like, wow, what good luck, right? And the guy's like, maybe. So
Right.
he's just remaining the same, watching it go up and down. And we've
Oh
talked
my
about
God.
this throughout the Tao, right? Throughout our whole episode, really about remaining the same. And as we say, it doesn't mean that you can't feel happy or sad or anything like that. It's just about uh staying instead of getting under the water, right? Or flying above, you're just staying on the surface. You're just riding with the waves kind of thing. And I feel like that's what
Going
this
with the
realm is
flow.
all about, really, just kind of surfing along.
Indeed, could it be? And it reminds me a lot too, because I've been listening to the Kybalion again, um, because I've been doing some research, reading, listening to Manly P. Hall related things. Um, I've gotten back into just kind of going back and referencing the Kybalion again, and I was listening to Bootsy Greenwood's audio version of the the Kybalion. I'm really enjoying it. And yeah, I mean, even this reminds me of that. Um, because it talks about the pendulum of like going one way and then going the other way and swinging back and forth um and like the pendulum will swing the other way just as much as it swung the other way. So like, if it swings this far this way, then it'll definitely swing, this far the other way. You can't just swing
Which,
this way and then expect it to go this way the other, you know what I mean? So
yeah,
so idea is, can you just, maintain kind of a balance and not have to swing too, not to be too polarized in your swing, which is fine. You can, but it's just harder on you in the end.
yeah,
And that's great because we all go through that. So,
yeah, exactly. And you know what? It's funny because as you were saying that, I was thinking of politics and how we saw this crazy swing to the left, and now we're starting to see a swing to the right. Could it be?
mm,
So
mm,
how crazy is it going to get, right? But I was thinking of a lot of times you see in movies, there's different themes. Like I'll use this one, Futurama. I love that show, Futurama. There was an episode where they were captured by these alien space Amazonian women. They're like these giant women, and they
mm-hmm.
got sentenced to death. And Fry, who's the main character or whatever, he gets sentenced to death by snoo snoo, and snoo is their word for like sex. So basically, he has to have sex with them until he dies or whatever. So like in the beginning, he's all excited about it. They don't show it or whatever. But later they'll show people going, and then later though, he's just like, no, like I can't do it anymore. So you see this theme a lot, like when you get a genie with three wishes, I wish for this, or like Midas with the golden
Mm-hmm.
touch. And at
Mm-hmm.
first it's great, but then everything he touches is gold. And I think that's kind of what they're talking about, right? You think you want these things that are going to make you happy, but too much of them is also bad too, So it's like be careful what you wish for. You really never know. So with this whole thing going in accordance with the Tao, you're just going with the flow. You don't really have expectations because if you don't, then your expectations can't not be met. You don't have to worry about that.
You're going with nature, right? The Tao.
Yeah. Yeah, the wind, right? As
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as Alan
Alan
Watts
Watts
will
would
say.
say.
Exactly.
That lovely drunkard.
I forgot what that book we read said about him, that he was something or other. And it's like, yeah, everybody has their vice. That's exactly why you don't put people on pedestals because they're going to, eventually fall from that. And then you're going to be upset. So just, why can't they just be a man like you and, have their things? But
Exactly.
anyway, I was shuffling a new deck that I got. It's called the Aquarian Tarot, but it's an older type deck. It's like what would you call that? I forgot what they call that. Okay, so anyway, the backs look like this. But anyway, two fell out. Oh, and they're right next to each other. That's funny. Well, because it's a brand new deck, so I just started shuffling it. 4 and 5 of cups, right? Art Deco is the word I was looking for. They're very Art Deco. Now, I wish they were a little bit more bright. They're just kind of muted, and I'm like, ugh, I don't like that, but whatever.
A lot of white, right?
Yeah. Like this
And I
dude's
feel
face. That dude's face is just like the same color as the
somber, yeah.
background. White.
And the white, for me, the white blank spaces, because I've had this deck myself for a long time, it reminds me of like the unwritten story. Like you have this
Hasn't been
story that you can
painted
write.
yet.
It's unpainted, it's like an unpainted canvas, or also it's up to the person who's looking at the card to place something in there, or you
Yeah.
could also even play with, you could look at it as representing blankness, like silence.
Mm.
There's so many ways to look at it, but I know you're saying it looks undone, looks unfinished.
I know. I want it to have more color. It should be they should give you pencils or colored pens to like finish it yourself.
Yeah,
I'm
that's a good
kidding.
idea. It's like a tarot coloring book all in
Yeah,
one.
tarot cards, coloring tarot cards. But 4 and 5 of cups. 4 of cups. I remember you telling me that it's like this options being presented to you that you're maybe it was may I don't know if it was you or not. Um, but I think it was one of the first readings you ever did for me. I think you gave me you pulled this card for me, and it was like an option was being presented to me, but I was not taking it. Something like that.
Yeah, and,
Um,
it reminds me of the theme we are talking about going with the flow, because in that card in the Rider Waite too, there's cards that I'm sorry, cups that are there, and then there's one cup being offered by a hand that's flying in,
mhm.
and that a lot of times represents maybe divine intervention or a gift from God or the universe or your higher self, or however you want to look at it. And it's a lot
Yeah.
of times it is something we can't see, or we don't see it as a gift or a blessing. We see it, yeah, right. We see it as you know, um, we see it like in that parable when the guy's horse runs away, right? Everyone else is like, oh no.
Mhm.
We see it as something sad, but then we don't realize we're getting more horses, and then that one of those wild horses is gonna save our son from getting swept up in this army. Yeah, I mean he might break his leg, but at least he's not gonna go get stuck with a spear or a sword or something.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what that represents emotionally a lot too, because it's cups.
Mhm.
For us, I think it could represent the wisdom we've gained because we've covered four different versions almost of every verse. We got one left. That's what this episode's all about, everybody. So it is a way of kind of gaining wisdom and understanding to go through something like this and do commentary on each, especially four different verses. So, and there's four cups.
Mhm.
So
Indeed.
it could also represent that as well. And I like because it's one character. He's in solitude. It looks like he's meditating, perhaps.
Mhm.
Or in the Rider Waite specifically, and even that one too, you could say they're more focused on the three cups that are on the ground. That's another thing too. Those three cups in the Rider Waite too, and in that one, they're touching the ground. So they're grounded, they're there, they could see them. It's in the physical realm. The other cup might be coming from the spiritual realm, right? So we might not see it exactly. Like, what is this? Is this a new person in my life?
Mhm.
New opportunity? Whatever.
And you pulled this for me before I met Cody. Like before I knew Cody was going to be the person I was, going to meet
Yeah.
and be with and stuff. But I'd already met him online. We were like just online friends, but um, you know, maybe I was being gifted this, you know, thing, but I wasn't yet accepting it because I didn't know yet. Maybe it was, something like that.
Yeah.
So,
Or even just gifted because the work you did on yourself allowed you to get to the spot to be in a relationship. And that's something I've noticed. A lot of people think they're in a relationship, and this isn't a judgment. I'm not even saying maybe this is what I'm doing. Maybe this is what everyone does, and I just think I'm better. But I think sometimes people are more in just a comfortable situation. If you're actually in a relationship and, everybody's going to fight and bicker and have little disagreements, that's great. But if you're using those to then say, well, what did I do to cause that? Like, well, how can I make that better? It's not my
mhm,
job to wake this person, stuff like that. That I think is more of a, like you're really building a relationship that's has a solid foundation, and
mhm.
I think that card for you can totally represent the work that you were doing to get to the place, because no one's going to agree on every single thing, like we use it for, because it's funny, but well, for some people, but the moon, say you're with somebody and they're just like, where
Not the
that thing is I think it's a planet or whatever, and they're going by the whole physical mainstream model, and you're not. You're just like, we're going to the moon. Get crackers, sucker. Don't forget crackers. We're going to the moon because it's made of cheese. You're more thinking that. So you could let that get in between you, or you could just say, hey, I could see why they would think it's a planet and ball, physical, mainstream. I could see why people believe that. And hey, maybe it is true. You could look at it that way instead of trying to argue and change their mind and show them pictures and the evidence, feed them some lunar cheese, be like, I got this from the moon. It's made of cheese. So, yeah, do you think that people saying the moon was made of cheese, earlier in like movies and stuff, or whatever, I wonder if that was some kind of nod, like we can't say the moon isn't what people say it is, but we could just keep saying it's made of cheese and it's a funny joke.
It's Swiss, you guys. It has holes all over it. Well,
Yeah, I got my cracker.
that was card number 4 of cups, which was followed by card number 5 of cups. This makes me think of spilled milk.
Yeah, this is, it's funny because the 4 and the 5 I put next to each other, it's like the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away, right?
Mm.
But what is everybody in both of those, or the 4 and 5, they both have cups that are upright, that are on the ground physically with them. So this though is more about when God or whatever, or the universe, instead of gifting you something you might not see in a good thing or whatever, this is when it's like a negative experience, right? And 3 out of 5, that's more than 50%. So it looks bad, right? This is maybe a way you can interpret this card is when it looks like the situation is dire, right? Like all the orcs in all the orcs in Mordor are outside the gates and they're pounding on the gates. They just knocked down the gate itself. I'm sorry, they're pounding on the walls and they just knocked down the gate and they're coming in and it's over, right? That's what it feels like. But you have
Was
those
that
two
at Helm's
cups.
Deep?
Yeah, well, yeah, that could be Helm's Deep or at Gondor. Either one,
Okay.
great analogies because both times it was darkest right before the light, and literally in the movie anyway, with the two towers, and I think in the book too, Gandalf comes back at Helm's Deep right when the sun comes up. So, that's what it's all about. In this person here, they have their back to those two cups, so it's the same kind of thing where they're ignoring what they have, or they are, in the 4 of cups, they weren't focused as much, I guess you could say. But in this one, they have their back to it. So it's a situation where, hey, maybe there's some grief going on in the world. And I like this card because this is what we talk about, and this is what the Dowley to me epitomizes. If you can look at the world as perfect, then you can see yourself as perfect because you can see all the perceived flaws in the world and the perceived flaws in yourself as just characteristics, as just waves in the ocean, as just, oh, I pick my nose. That's just another wave, like I'm an alcoholic. All right, children are dying in Palestine, like we're just going with the flow. Yeah, so.
Yeah. As offensive as it may seem to some people.
Yeah, on the physical, super offensive. as we say. But on the spiritual, we try to look at it as resistance. All these evil things are like hurdles for us to get better at whatever we're here to figure out, right? Sharon and I kind of believe we're here to elevate our consciousness and get to the next level. And I was thinking about this the other day because everybody has their own idea of what life's about. And I'm like, you know what? That's might be close, but we're probably wrong. There's probably something else, but it's okay. Like no one's ever gonna know. It's your insistence or maybe people's feeling that they're right by gathering all this information. They find their worldview and they cement it even further and they find stuff that makes sense, facts out in the world that correspond with their worldview, and they feel better about it. And then they get this. But I look at it as like, I don't know, and the facts that I take in, I'm just like, this is more interesting. And it just colors how I might feel what it is, right? But the way we look at it, though, we say, if you don't know, then there's no fear. There's no fear of the unknown. You just let it go. It's a mystery. That's what I was trying to say. You accept the mystery of the situation as it is. Um, yeah, and that's really, I feel like how this card corresponds with the Tao. You're looking at that disaster and you're just accepting it for what it is. The spilled milk, right? You can't, what are you going to do? It's already on the floor.
Good call. I like it.
Thank you. Good cards.
So, um, well, just off topic real quick. I just want to
Yeah.
show people that I got a new deck, well, okay, so I got the Aquarian Tarot, but I also got 2 Oracle decks, and they're like an Indian type. So this is just the book for it, but it's the Lakshmi Oracle. I don't know how to pronounce it.
I'm gonna pin you again and then just keep quiet. All right. No, I mean I'm gonna keep quiet. You talk.
Lakshmi, I'm guessing is how it's called. And it's giving me
It's hard to read.
Um,
It's on video.
that's one of them. And the backs, oh, the backs are so pretty. They look like lotus. They look like lotus flowers. And then this is just a sampling of what some of the cards look like. And I haven't shuffled them yet, so they're pretty brand new here. So that's one. I'd been wanting to get some of these like Indian style type decks because I want to kind of learn the names of the goddesses and gods and stuff. But here's the other one I got. It's called the Kali Oracle. And the backs look like this. And here are some of the cards. They're really beautifully depicted.
That's sick.
Yeah, right.
Wow. It's like they modeled them off of real people.
Right? They look really realistic.
Yeah.
A cartoon version of a real person.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, oh, that's another lotus. How pretty. Is that a lotus flower or something? I don't know what moksha means. Moksha of Kali.
Spiritual liberation, I think.
Moksha means spiritual liberation.
I believe so, yeah.
Is that the lotus? Is that a lotus?
That would make sense, yeah, because you're opening up the lotus. It's when it opens.
So that's crazy. The other one I got, the backs were lotuses. I'm gonna just compare that real quick.
I can look it
like
up. I think that's
decks.
I think he talks about it in Ekwan Eshwan Ekwana
Eknath Eshwaran.
Eknath Eshwan's version of the Oh
The
yeah.
backs of these
I like
of
how it
this
has the
deck.
closed one too, the open one and the closed one coming up because
Yeah.
the open one is like, and then that closed one coming up is like your next realization, right? Because everyone thinks you have this awakening, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm
Yeah.
woke now, but that represents the open one, and then the one growing is the next, like the next idea
The
you'll
next level of consciousness,
have.
right? Um, yeah, so and there you go. There's a couple more. So, I just thought these decks were so pretty. I was like, "Oh my gosh." And I saw a pop-up message come up that like they were on sale or something, or they like had been kind of reduced in price. And I was like, okay, well, maybe now's the time. So I thought I would share them
Hell
with
yeah,
you.
it's a good time for it. We can even That's an episode idea where we just go through, we each pick like a few decks and we could go through and talk about them
We
and
could.
pull cards.
Yeah.
That'd be a fun live one with the chat.
Yeah, we
Speaking of the
totally could.
chat, is anything going on in there? What's up, chat? What's up,
Oh yeah.
Cody? How you doing? Joe, what's going on? Chris, QSB, Blue.
Oh
Good to see
yay,
you,
blue.
Blue. All right.
So, do you want to read verse 81? I just want to
Yeah.
tell people that once we're done reading verse 81, it's not going to be like over. But I have some things to talk about to kind of tie up some loose ends. Um, I want to talk a little bit about what I guess, some of the research I was doing on understanding what Tao and Day really mean. And also comparing it to like some like more modern ideas of um like more modern philosophical ideas about how it's related to some more modern philosophical ideas. So
So stick around for that. So if you're new, thank you. Welcome. You're here at the end of our series in the Tao Te Ching. We started almost 2 years ago, 2023, with a
actually like a
introduction and
year and what, 6 months, 7 months maybe.
well, July is four
Oh wait,
months.
okay, okay, July,
Yeah.
okay, it
Oh,
was
oh,
end of
so it's
July
been a
though.
year and 8 months.
Yeah, yeah.
And so we cover four different versions of each verse. I'll pull them up and we give commentary afterwards. If you like it, give us a thumbs up. Subscribe, share us around, check us out. Morelawsmoreproblems.com is the website. Click on the Overshare and tab, and you could find all the ways to support us and everything there, and to find us on podcast form if you just prefer the audio. Okay, here we go. Verse 81, the final verse by Stephen Mitchell, his interpretation.
Here we
Um,
go.
Here we go. I got these readers that are killing it when I have my contacts in. All right. True words aren't eloquent. Eloquent words aren't true. Wise men don't need to prove their point. Men who need to prove their point aren't wise. The master has no possessions. The more he does for others, the happier he is. The more he gives to others, the wealthier he is. The Tao nourishes by not forcing. By not dominating, the master leads.
Wow, this is like such a beautiful verse. It's like the beautiful ending to this entire poet poem, to the poetry in this beautiful book. Anyway, I'll shut up and I'll start reading. Dwight Goddard from 1919 entitles verse 81, "The nature of the essential. Faithful words are often not pleasant. Pleasant words are often not faithful. Good men do not dispute. Hmm. The
Saved it
ones
for the commentary. No, I'm just kidding.
the ones who dispute are not good." It's not me, guys. I'm not saying this, guys. The Tao is saying this. Lao Tzu, blame him. The learned men are often not the wise men, nor the wise men the learned. The wise man does not hoard, but ever working for others, he will the more exceedingly acquire. Having given to others freely, he himself will have in plenty. Tao of heaven benefits but does not injure. The wise man's Tao leads him to act but not to quarrel. Wow.
Huge. All
Huge,
right.
huge. And we're always preaching to ourselves, just to keep that in mind.
All right. Stan Rosenthal
Quietly.
does not disappoint with his version of the his translation. Nice
Link.
and wordy. Stan Rosenthal from 1984, verse 81, manifesting simplicity. The truth is not always beautiful, nor beautiful words the truth. Those who have virtue have no need argument for its own sake, for they know that argument is of no avail. Wow. Those who have knowledge of the natural way do not train themselves in cunning, whilst those who use cunning to rule their lives and the lives of others are not knowledgeable of the Tao, nor of natural happiness. The sage seeks not to have a store of things or knowledge, for he knows the less of these he has, the more he has, and that the more he gives, the greater his abundance. The way of the sage is pointed but does not harm. The way of the sage is to work without cunning.
Mm.
Mm.
Aleister Crowley from 1918. The showing forth of simplicity. True speech is not elegant. Elaborate speech is not truth.
Wow.
Those who know do not argue. The argumentative are without knowledge. This is like those who know don't speak, and those who speak don't know.
Yeah.
Sorry,
All
I'm
right.
commenting. Sorry. Those who have assimilated are not learned. Those who are those who are gross with learning have not assimilated. The wise man doth not hoard. The more he giveth, the more he hath. The more he watereth, the more he is watered himself. The Tao of heaven is like an arrow, yet it woundeth not. And the wise man in all his works maketh no contention. Gosh darn it. I tell you, this is a great ending to this whole book.
Yeah. And remember, everybody, keep in mind that this is the last one. So in a way, it could be kind of summing up everything. This might be the most important verse, but you're really only going to get its true meaning if you go through every verse and get an idea or an understanding of what it means to you. And then along that same theme, this is kind of going to wrap it up, I feel. And I feel like it is, honestly, with some of the things that they're saying. Well, we'll get into it as we do the commentary, I guess. But do you have anything you want to say or you want to jump in?
No, it's I'm ready. It's a great verse.
The true words aren't eloquent. Eloquent words aren't true. Now, he's
Mm.
going ahead and just making a whole blanket statement where sometimes there's more wiggle room, if you will, but um obviously it's not always the case. I feel like whenever they make a definitive statement, it's kind of like a joke. Whenever Lao Tzu makes this definitive statement, he's kind of joking because he's like, well, if you read the whole Tao, you'll realize that there are really no definitive statements, right? But we can make him anyway because if you just read this out of context, then it's your fault if you fall for it. You gotta the true wise men and women read it all and try to absorb it, right? So we could always say that, yeah, sometimes maybe true words could seem eloquent, but this also reminds me of a salesperson, like a coming over,
Mm.
talking about a
Mm.
car, talking it all up. I've used to sell cars, and I tell you, when I worked for several different dealerships, but when I worked, I think it was at Nissan, I ended up was the last one I sold cars. Nissans or Hondas, I don't know how it is now, but back then they just sold themselves. People just knew. You don't really have to say much about them. They're like, "Yep, we know, good car, we'll take it." So you don't have to flower things up. And if people are the Tao's kind of, if people are flowering it up or trying to use all these nice words, the Tao's trying to let you know that, hey, maybe you should look at this. Um, but I feel like we look at everything internally and esoterically. So for this, it's really about yourself. What are you saying? Are you lying or to other people? But it's a to keep it in mind about your own speech.
Yeah. What you said about like selling reminds me of um marketing, which I
Yeah.
never was really fond of. You know,
You mean
it's
the whole other study of this human psychology like we do, but to use it to sell things? Oh yeah,
no.
that.
I do not like marketing.
It's
Never
a
did.
it's a study of human behavior, but to sell them more things. Yeah, it's interesting. And I'm not like even saying I hate it, but I know you're saying I'm a fan of it either.
Yeah. Funny enough, I ended up in that department before I stopped the 9 to 5.
So you got to see how it works.
Well,
Yeah,
I was kind of adjacent to it already, so I kind of already knew. I was kind of already in it a little bit, but I wasn't in that quote department per se. And then some managers got shuffled around, one left, one retired, and so I had to get moved around and stuff. So
the old corporate shuffle. Yeah,
mhm.
I dealt with some marketing because I was in promotions, like promoting clubs and DJing and bars and stuff like that. So, oh yeah, I know. I used to run. I was because the other guy that started one of the clubs, he had all these pages, but they're all Facebook pages of like famous people. Like there was like Bon Jovi fans of Connecticut, Connecticut fans of Bon Jovi, Connecticut fan, whatever. It was genius because back then everyone, it was like 2010, everyone would just like fan pages, and then you just post on the fan page about your club and all this. Anyway, so I used to, and whenever you go, like have creepy guys trying to message it, it's like, dude, I'm a guy too. Anyway, it's funny how psychology works. That's what I'm trying to say. And we have a pretty good understanding, both of us. It seems it's funny that we have this little experience with it.
Mhm.
All right, let's get back
Sorry,
up
we
to
can
this.
go back to the to the reading.
Good call. All right, so we're here. Wise men don't need to prove their point. Men who need to prove their point aren't wise. So he's being very poetic with this, and also you get these paradoxes, kind of.
Yes, I like those when he flips them like that. Those were always fun.
Yeah, yeah, because you see it right. You're like, oh yeah, apophatic method. There it is. The master has no possession, and I guess we could talk. Well, we could go talk about that more as we get into the other verses, what it might actually mean exactly. The master has no possessions. The more he does for others, the happier he is. So this, I think, has to do with attachments. Doesn't mean you don't have to own anything. Some people get extreme and get rid of anything, but this is more about
In
do
his
your pos
mind.
yeah, and do they own you or do you own them?
Mm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it makes me think of you shall own you shall own nothing and be happy. And
Yeah.
it's like, well, I already don't own anything really.
And I'm
Really,
happy.
honestly.
You
I
will
co-
own nothing and be happy. I already do. Now what?
I
Klaus.
am already happy.
Your
So leave me
move.
alone.
Your move, Klaus Schwab. I did a reading for, by the way, everybody, Sharon and I, we do tarot readings. If you like a reading or whatever, hit us up. Really reasonable. I did a reading for a friend earlier and we were talking about that. And I was telling him about my show, how I did FEMA camp. I'm like, yeah, if I get put in a FEMA camp, I'm like, I'm just gonna be the funniest one in the FEMA camp. Like, what am I gonna do? Because that's gonna piss him off more than trying to. I mean, I'll escape if I can, obviously. Just kidding, government. I wouldn't escape. But yeah, I think that it's like that would really irk them if you're just laughing. Klaus Schwab would be, I would be like a little orphan Annie, and Klaus Schwab would adopt me. It'd be great. It's a hard
Oh
knock
my
life
gosh.
for me. It's We are going to control the world, Brandon. You can come with me. So that's why you got to like our show, because then we could save all our fans. Like, no, these guys are cool, Klaus. Free Blue
Yeah.
Kachina. Free him from his FEMA camp and let him hang out with us. He's real cool.
Just don't
Oh,
be attached that you're in a FEMA camp, you know?
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Enjoy it. Have fun. Be the be the be the joker. Be the
Yeah.
jester.
And if you're
Um,
really worried about FEMA camps, just follow our show, and when it happens, I'll put in a good word for you.
Michal says
Please, Claus, you're embarrassing yourself. Yeah, exactly. Well, that's a great point, Michal. Yeah, he says like that was Schwab's idea that we don't need anything to be happy because it comes from within. Yeah, that's, could it be that a lot of these people who think they're
it's inverted. Like it's go ahead, you say it. You'll say
well,
it
yeah,
better
it's
than I can.
totally inverted. And people that are in these circles with power in the physical realm, it could be that, like we were saying with marketing, they know about the psychology and they use these concepts, this amazing concept like don't be attached, own nothing and be happy. And they just kind of flip it around and people are like, whoa, it hits them, because it's like there's something there. I don't know what it is. Like there's truth behind there. Your higher self gets it. But you little scared one, all you have to do is, I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings total obliteration. And just read that and realize it could be just that feeling is a message from your higher self to, hey, pay attention here, wake up. What are they really trying to say here? Don't let the
Yeah.
fear and the adrenaline you get from the fear override your sense of wonder and awe at this realm.
Yeah. Maybe they are trying to piss you off, but it's a catalyst for growth, you know?
Yeah.
They're inverting the truth to try to piss you off. Like they're speaking truth, right? And it's pissing you off, but why is it pissing you off? Because there's truth there. There's something there. You arrived here with no clothes, with no possessions, right? How will you leave? Can you take a big dumpster, a big, can you fill your coffin with or your urn or whatever? Can you fill it with all your possessions and take it with you? No. And why? This is a learning grounds. This is a proving grounds.
And another thing too is the statement, and thank you for Michal for pointing out technically they say you will own nothing. The statement you will own nothing and be happy is another reference to death, because when you die, you will own nothing. And when you wake up, you probably will be happy because you'll be like, oh, this was just a test or whatever it is, right? But because you're identifying with your ego and your physical form, you hear that and it's like, oh, they're talking about death. I don't want to. Let's go do some more escapism. We can't think about dying, right? And that's why I feel like I just have this different worldview from people, and I can see the world in different ways because I kind of overcame my fear of death through a set of different circumstances. I mean, I was in the Marine Corps, you go through a lot of that. They put that into you, and then I just had to, I almost drowned in the ocean. We talked about that. So just these experiences that I've had, and then the meditation on top of that to go a little further, uh, is what's helped me get this, whole point of view. So I feel anyway, to bring it back to that, I like to go far to bring myself back as an exercise. But to bring it back, right, it's like this a little, you're identifying with this ego, like I was saying, your physical form, and you have fear of the death. So you hear it and you just get scared. But I really feel like there's nothing to be scared about, right? That's the big secret that they don't want to tell you. What's up, Kirk? Dissident Jones. Good to see you in there. But
Right.
yeah, that's all we're trying to say.
Back to the lecture at hand.
Back to the lecture at hand. Yeah. Is that a
I used to say that a lot.
tribe called Quest?
Hmm?
Who is that? Why I know that verse.
Oh, what do you mean
Uh,
back to the lecture at hand?
yeah, that's
Isn't
from a
that like
rap.
Dr. Dre?
Yes. Yeah. Oh yeah. Duh. Yeah. Back to like this and like that. I was trying to go too deep. Yeah, that's a G thing. Ain't nothing but a G
I didn't
thing,
know which song it
baby.
was, but I just remember back to the lecture at hand. That's all I
The
remember.
funny thing, you bring that song is it ain't nothing but a G thing, right? Ain't nothing but a G thing, baby. G, right? God. Think
Hmm.
about it. Ain't nothing but a God. It's so all these, and as I said this earlier in my tarot reading too, it doesn't mean like the Illuminati's controlling music or whatever. You know, people are like, oh, the Illuminati must have put those words in there for people to listen. Or could it have been God through the person who wrote the lyrics, put it in there? I don't know. You believe
They
in God, right?
channeled it from God.
Why? Because some people need to go through that stage. It's part of alchemy that the what is it, the blackening stage or whatever, you know, you got to go through that. That's all it is. It's a cycle. You get the three colors of black, red, and white, right? You're burning, you're smudging, and you're white, and I don't know, whatever. White, you're awesome if you're white, I guess now. White's the only real true stage in the alchemy process. If you're not white, you better just get the hell out of this country. No. I'm just all right.
Jokes. These are
I'm a comedian. Yeah.
stand-up comedy rehearsal,
They're offensive
everybody.
jokes hidden in hours of boring but amazing content if you're into it. You get away
What was
with
I
it
gonna
anyway.
say? Uh, Speaking of the Illuminati, I've been reading up on like Manly P. Hall and stuff like that, and this guy Mitch Horowitz um writes a lot about him because he was inspired by him um years ago when he came across his work, and so he did a lot of research on his stuff, and he's helped the Philosophical Research Society. I think that's the one that Manly P. Hall founded. And so he's written lots of books about Manly P. Hall stuff, about stuff like the Kybalion, anything that's like kind of related to like the um things that were written in the Secret Teachings of All Ages by Manly P. Hall. So anything related to like hermetics, hermeticism, all that stuff, the Kybalion. But anyway, I think in the book about, it's like called The Seeker's Guide to the Secret Teachings of All Ages, Mitch Horowitz wrote, and I finally finished reading. It was a good like kind of intro. I feel like kind of a background for all that. I think it was that book where he mentioned that the Illuminati wasn't even like it wasn't even around for long enough and didn't even get off the ground to become anything like uh that stayed around. It kind of like fizzled out. And but
Sounds like
people
something the Illuminati would say. I'm just kidding.
right, right.
Sorry.
And
What are
so
you, a
people
shill,
keep
Sharon? Are you a
yeah,
shill for the? No. Oh my God,
yeah.
God.
So people keep, accusing this like non-existent group of um see, keepers of secret knowledge, secret society of when it didn't last. I can't remember who the I don't remember all the detail, but I can't remember who started it. And then
Adam
it,
Weishaupt,
oh, okay. Yes. That makes
like the
rings a
late
bell.
1700s or whatever. Yeah, I used to
Yeah.
know all that stuff.
Yeah. So, but anyway, I just wanted to point that out. I thought that was funny because I didn't know that before. And just so everybody knows, because I recently learned about this as I was reading through that book, the Seeker's Guide to the Secret Teachings of All Ages, that the three initiates who wrote the Kybalion was none other than a pen name for William Walker Atkinson. He
Crazy.
liked to use pen names for things. So he's also like done a translation. I think he did a translation of the Tao of the Bhagavad Gita, I think, as Yogi Ramacharaka or something like that. Um,
Interesting.
Yeah, Yogi Ramacharaka is a pseudonym or pen name for William Walker Atkinson. Yep. Yep. And he did a translation of the Bhagavad Gita with that name. So anyway, just thought that
I
was interesting.
love that. It's like it stays timeless, but you don't get attached to it. Oh,
The
the wheels
Kybalion?
are already turning in my head because then you're not put on a pedestal because it
Mm,
wasn't Brandon John Smith who,
yeah.
did that. It was fucking
The three
Brandon
initiates
Bonanza.
are Yogi Ramacharaka.
Yeah, Yogi Brandon Bonanza. Brando Bonanzo.
Yeah, so we're getting off topic, but we can
Yeah,
get
we're
back
we're
on.
just oversharing. It's what we do. All right, I can bring it back. Good stuff though. That's interesting. And in the three initiates, that just makes me think it's really cool because he's not looking at himself as one, but three different personalities inside of one, and he's like, this is our I wrote some of this when I was grumpy in the morning, and then I wrote some of this later when I was having a great day, and then I was tired and groggy in the evening, and I wrote there was three different people writing this stuff. All righty, the let's see, the more so I was thinking I was here, the more
All righty then.
then the more he gives to others,
Oh
the
my God.
wealthier he is. The down nourishes by not forcing, by not dominating the master lead. So,
Wow. We could sing the verses of the Tao.
whoa. Oh my God, we just became millionaires. The more he gives to others, the wealthier he is. And that's spiritually for sure. You could see that. The more, it's better to give than receive is embodied right there. And
Mm-hmm.
it's hard because we get so attached to the physical and we feel like we need, when we want to give money or not money. It's so weird, right? But if you can give it and just say
Brandon,
it's up to God,
we get so attached.
my things. Hang on, here we go. This
They're mine.
this guy hasn't made an appearance on the show in a while. Ah,
Nice.
my things. Remember this, everybody, from the studio in the basement when I had the towel behind me, and then I had somebody. I did a wedding in February, and someone was there that I had done their wedding last year, and they're like, "Oh, do you still have the big thing behind you?" Because I had that tapestry thing behind me that
Oh.
was really a shower curtain, and I'm like, "No, I moved, so I got it." But yeah, it was a shout out. I'm like, "Sweet," looked like a big sandworm coming to eat me.
Oh, that's
I have
right.
been eaten and
Right.
digested by the sandworm, and I'm inside the sandworm now. Everybody, we're coming live to you from inside the huff huff of the sandworm.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so I don't know what I was talking about. Oh yeah, better to give than receive. So yeah, spiritually for sure. None other than the fact that you are when you're giving, if you can give without attachment, you are saying to the universe that I'm not worried about this. I know it's going to come back to me. It's like an act of faith at the end of the day. Take a
Mhm.
drink, everybody. At the end of the day, it's just an act of faith, really. Yeah, let's do it. Cheers to the end of the day.
Cheers. At the end of the day.
May the end of the day go your way. All right.
I don't know if I've done the you know what I'm saying in a while.
No, yeah, we're both getting so if you guys go back and watch some of these, we might have a little crutches, but I feel like we're getting better with our much better. La la la.
I
All
mean,
right.
I say
So,
I don't know if I've said it, so maybe I haven't. I just don't notice.
yeah, that's true. I could like, nah, I mean, I I remember I love when they show like two characters and one's like, you know what I'm saying? And the other guy keeps going, yeah, I do know what you're saying. Like, because I feel like that's happened to me when I was younger, when I didn't realize what was going on. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, I could clearly understand what you're saying. I'm following this conversation perfectly, Joe,
It's just like
or
using the
Ralph.
word like. Now, that's probably one word I use a lot too. Like.
Yeah, like is a tough one. What are you gonna do? We're the best darn show on the internet, so it don't matter. The Tao nourishes by not forcing, by not dominating, the master leads.
Mm.
So leading by example, and this is how it is, the master leads by not dominating. So what that means is you're leading by example. Because when you're dominating, it's like the original part, or we're going to talk about more. It's like arguing. I was going to make a new word. It's like
Argumentating.
argumating. You have argumate, at the end of the day, you argumating with everybody. So instead of forcing people to go to your will, it's about going with the flow because yeah, you've seen Schitt's Creek, right? The
Me?
show. Have you seen the
Oh,
show
no,
Schitt's
no. I
Creek?
thought you were
Yeah.
talking about Up Schitt's Creek. I'm like, I've heard of the phrase.
Yeah, so there's a show called Schitt's Creek and it's spelled Schitt, and it's about this family who is they
That's
probably have
funny.
large noses and they have money and then they get like they have to live poor in a motel, whatever. And the lady that's the mother is also the mother from Beetlejuice. And my lovely wife and Elizabeth were talking about the show because it's so funny. It could be a little annoying or much, but it's so funny. They're so deadpan with their humor. But I forget her name, the actress, but she plays Moira. And as the character, she just dominates every situation by being like that a lot of times. Like she just doesn't, if somebody insults her, she just takes it as a compliment openly and like reframes it. It's so she's living in her own world, and it's so crazy because that's really what this is like, right? Like uh leading by example and not dominating. You're in there and you're leading, but you're not dominating because whatever happens, you just kind of adapt and overcome and go
Flow
with
with
it.
it. Yeah.
And after a while, people just get worn down. That's really what it is. It's all about will, really, at the end of the day. That's why a lot of people stay together that don't want to stay together because they just are worn down. Uh, I felt like that in relationships before. Not anymore, but yeah. So that's what we talk about leading by example. But let's get into the other verses because I'm sure we have much more to say. All right. But yeah, good show, Schitt's Creek, really hilarious. You could see the whole reframing of things really well and how they just yeah, anyway. So funny.
Well, we have Dwight Goddard's version of verse 81 from 1919 entitled The Nature of the Essential. All right, so he says faithful words are often not pleasant. Pleasant words are often not faithful. And so he uses faithful instead of true. And if you think about something that is true, I guess it could also be described as faithful, something that is faithful to, I don't know how to describe it. I'm terrible with descriptions. Or I shouldn't say that. I need help with descriptions.
You're perfect with
with def
descriptions. It's
with
just everybody
definitions.
else doesn't get it.
Yeah, I'm perfect with descriptions in here, but when they start to try to come out, they don't come out.
Yeah, I was just taking the full farther other polar opposite of that. Like it's everyone else who can't get your
Oh, yeah, true, true. See?
um
Just
yeah. So I looked up faithful just for the heck of it,
yes,
right?
please do.
Steadfast in affection or allegiance. So you look at steadfast in allegiance, firm in adherence to promises or in observance of duty, given with strong assurance, true to the facts, to a standard, or to an original.
True
So,
to the facts. There you go.
yeah, right? There you go. Faithful, true to the facts. So just a more spiritual word than true, I guess you could say, right?
Yeah, because true is a very difficult word. Um, I
You
do
don't
want,
say.
yeah, I would like to do an episode on true, and maybe that'll be our next episode. I'm just thinking out loud, but um, yeah, like we could philosophize about what the word true means and how people define it and how we might try to define it because it's a very it's like it's a hard word to like, you know, pin down. So, um true and truth and all that stuff. But So
Oh yeah.
anyway, faithful and true, right? Those can be synonyms. And then eloquent is very different than pleasant. So eloquent kind of gives you this connotation of, coming from someone who's well spoken and, maybe a diplomat or something like that, um and pleasant is just more like, do you like it or do you not like it?
Yeah, it's simpler, right? Everybody knows what pleasant
Pleasant.
means.
Yeah.
Eloquent is more up to interpretation, I guess. Well, I guess pleasant is too, So if you're eloquent, marked by forceful and fluent expression, vividly or movingly expressive or revealing.
I guess I thought it had this connotation of like, someone important who speaks well, who is like well versed and, well read and using all the right terminology and all this
Oh yeah, it
stuff.
has to do with speaking. Sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you, but it says since eloquent has to do with speaking, it makes sense that it comes from Latin verb loqui. But anyway, yeah, you're right. It's all about expression. Sorry, I didn't mean to
Oh yeah,
stop.
that's okay. Um that's what we're here for. To look up words that we don't know and or that we think we know and we want to kind of pin down a little bit more. So
I like it. Yeah, yeah,
words.
exactly. Because it goes back to basically admitting that you don't know everything, right? Because
Mhm.
somebody might be embarrassed, like I know what that word means, but
Yeah, I'm just like, you know what? I've always been not great at speaking out loud what a word means in my head. So like in my head I have this idea of what it means, but I don't know how to express it. So that's why I end up having to look up a word to define it because I'm like, I know what it means, but I don't, how to
um,
use it in a sentence, but I don't know how to define it.
can you use it in a sentence? Croxadiffle is a hard word to spell. All right, it's South Park.
Oh,
Ref
okay.
there,
So
yeah. Yes.
back to those words of faithful and pleasant. And so when you hear when you hear words or, you know, phrases or sentences that are faithful and true, they may not sound great to you because you may not like you, it's like the the truth hurts or like you can't handle the truth. It's basically that.
Yes, exactly.
You can't handle the truth. Um, but
So,
go ahead.
therefore, if you're feeling pain or suffering, what does that mean? It could mean that you're not accepting a hard truth in your life. I mean, I'm not going to make a claim, but could it be, even if you have a pain in your knee, pain, suffering, you're sad, there's some kind of acceptance that is not going on. And listen, I get it, right? But this is what Buddha says too. So, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, very true. So the opposite statement or the paradoxical statement or the other side of the story is that when you hear, nice things like things that are marketing tools, perhaps, um, it is highly likely, and this is basically saying that it is pretty much always the case, that they are not telling you truth. They are not faithful. They're not, um, they're missing the mark They're
And
sinful
you could,
because that's what sin is. Sin is missing the mark.
yeah, yeah. And you could even look at this as a circumstance in your life. If you take this as an analogy and say, well, when things are going good and I'm happy and I'm all excited about it, maybe that's false. And when things are bad, and things hurt, maybe that's the real truth. There's like it's trying to we want to do a show about truth. There's some truth for you. All pain is a message from a truth that you aren't willing to accept yet. Boom. Do I just dissolve now and go to the next realm? No, I'm just kidding.
Can you repeat that statement so we can write it down for next time?
Yeah,
All pain
all pain is a message from a truth that you can't handle yet, or that you're not ready to accept. There you go. All pain is a
is a message from
message
a
from a
truth
truth
that you're not ready to
that you're
accept.
not ready to accept. That's a
Wow.
quote from
Brando Bonanza.
Brando Bonanza. That's a quote. Don't quote me, you guys. No. But I'm sure there's
Don't
people maybe.
worship me. Don't quote me. No.
Yeah. You can quote me now because I'm still talking shit, Easy E. Yeah, that's really what I think this 1 year and 8 months in several hours and days of audio and talking about this. One of the things that's really starting to get cemented in. So it's not like we're preaching to the choir. There we go. But this is why I'm glad we're talking about it too. And we've talked about it a lot, but I don't think so eloquently, so simply, right? We're boiling all these concepts down to what it means in everyday life, the simple things, right? A lot of us probably aren't going to be kings, as it says in the Tao,
Hangs.
the king, but you're the king of your own castle, your own inner castle. Every man is the king of his own castle. I've heard that, right? Yes, even if you live
Even
in the
if you're a
woods.
woman, you're the queen of your castle.
Yes, and the queen is just as important. It's that masculine, feminine, it's a polar thing of the same thing. It's the same thing. It's just the opposite
The
spectrum, right?
Kybalion. We'll talk about it one of
So
these
we
days. I
can look,
think we'll.
yeah, you can look at the differences like between a hot day and a cold day, but it's just a reading that you're giving. So when you realize that, then you don't have to get attached to one or the other, right? I think that's the other thing that, and again, we'll talk about this in the Kabbalion, but I want to say here with realizing polarities and everything is really just a pendulum or polarity. There is no hot and cold. It's just a measurement on a scale. It's a point you're picking. And to realize that in life too, um, because it goes back to, my horse ran away. Oh, it came back. We're just here existing in this medium. You know, it's up to us to view it how we want. So that's all. And I think as you start to view it that way, it really does make changes. It's made changes in my life and in the people around me. Like that's when you really start to lead by example for whatever reason, because you might be, when you're trying to tell somebody a hard truth, you're the bad guy. But when you're living the example, they're the bad guy because they see, oh shit, I'm the one who's not, podcasts, for example. If people watch this. So a lot of people who watch podcasts also want a podcast or listen. That's how I got into it. I listened for a couple of years and before I started doing it for years. And then I started doing it, right? So a lot of people, so say we get on this podcast and we're doing it, people that want a podcast that also watch, they're gonna, instead of us being the bad guys, they're gonna be like, damn it, I need to start doing this too. And it's gonna start opening them up to some uncomfortable truths, but ones that they could handle on their own, or maybe not, or whatever, but only ones they'll be able to handle because they're looking at it from their own way. They have a motivation, right? They're like, oh, so it's not something telling them from the outside that this is what you must do. It's a motivation coming from within. So that's really what I'm seeing with all this, like lead by example and the other one I was talking about. But yeah, that's how you could really be the force of change that you want to be. To expose people to the uncomfortable truths, let them do it on their own. And you're just the catalyst instead of trying to be, the one in control. That's the ego that wants that. It wants the recognition. It wants to say, oh, I feel so good because look what I did. But it's fine too, again.
Is it
All right.
John says healed people heal people.
Yeah. Yeah, people have to heal themselves.
All right,
All
shall
right.
we go back to the lecture at hand?
Back to the lecture at hand.
All right, so that was all the first two lines, guys. Good men do not dispute. The ones who dispute are not good. Wow. Um, Stephen Mitchell, as compared to Stephen Mitchell, who says wise men do not need to prove their point. Men who need to prove their point aren't wise. So good and wise are being used kind of here as like synonyms, right? Because
In
clearly the Tao was being quite clear. These verses are almost, they're just using a few different words. They're using synonyms, but this was pretty clear. But it helps to use synonyms because language, as we've talked about many times before, is limited, right? And
it's so
so
subjective too to
mhm.
the, other person who is consuming that language that was written down by another. Excuse me. Yes.
Yeah, so good and wise are being used as synonyms here, um, or at least we're observing the synonyms, uh, and proving their point and disputing, right? So when you're trying to prove your point, you're kind of disputing, right? You're like, I don't agree with you. I don't agree with, I mean, I'm preaching to myself, okay? Because I've said I don't agree before. So I'm not.
I still say it to this. I
Yeah,
probably said it
yeah.
today.
So do I. I don't agree with that.
How dare
But
you?
but when I say that, what am I doing? I'm trying to dispute. Like why? Why am I trying to dispute? And so in that sense, I am not being wise. I'm not being quote good. Um so there you go. And then the next lines say,
I'm bringing it up right now.
I can read it from my okay. The learned men and the learned people are people who have learned. Okay. So people who are have studied,
And
right? The learn
we could think about the word learn, right? Let's define that really quick because
okay.
I know that education doesn't mean exactly what people think it does. So what about learn? What is
Education? You mean it's not indoctrination?
you mean education? I remember seeing those signs plastered all over Yale's campus because I used to hang out downtown New Haven. It said education, and it was like I had no idea what it was. I just thought it was hilarious. I'm like, that's a great pun.
Why?
To gain knowledge or understanding of skill in by study, instruction, or experience. To memorize, to come to be able, to come to realize, to come to know, to inform of something. Uh, okay. So, let's see. The learned man. So, you're talking about somebody who studies things from a book, usually. I mean, it does say you can gain by experience also, but I feel like learn in knowledge versus like wisdom in a wise man. Those two concepts, that's what it means. Like the learned is more about like book studying and not getting out there and getting your feet wet, right? So it's like about reading about the dark night of the soul and reading about these concepts of having to wake up and like, oh, this sounds cool. And then versus really having it where you're like, ah, and you're
The
crying and laughing at the
experience
same time.
to know, right? The experience brings the knowledge.
Yeah,
Knowledge.
there you go. All right, cool.
So the learning experience, right? You have learning experiences. So these learned men, these men who have learned, people who have learned, are often not the wise men. Wow, right? You would think they would be, right? Because they have learned, they've experienced, but yet they're often not. So he's not making a huge claim. He's just saying most of the time they're not. They don't learn from their They don't learn from their experiences, apparently.
They're
Um,
learning from books and from other people's stories. Was
right.
good too. It's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
That's why it says often not, right?
Yeah.
So
Right.
be both.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, well, this is interesting because I don't know if it has a corresponding line in Stephen Mitchell.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's going along with the this whole good men do not dispute and all that stuff. Because he's probably saying, okay, if you're trying to dispute, you know, you might not be a wise man because you didn't learn from your experiences.
Yeah, he kind of puts it all in one.
Yeah, maybe Stephen Mitchell
Yeah.
just put it all in one and Dwight Goddard kind of split it out a little bit more. Okay, so it says the learned men are often not the wise men, nor the wise men the learned. So that's interesting. Um okay, yes, yeah. So in quotes, right? The learned. So you think of people who okay, when I was growing up in church, in this culty church, they talked a lot about like, oh, seminaries are bad because, they're, they're I don't remember if they were a bad thing necessarily. Maybe they were, but it's like, oh, you don't need to go to a seminary to learn the Bible. You can just learn it yourself or whatever, right? So, yeah, in some ways, I get it, you know, but it's like, oh, but you only get a certain degree if you go to the seminary. You get like this piece of paper that says you're a learned man. You studied XYZ and now you're, Reverend so and so. Whereas, like, the one who didn't get the certificate, but actually did the study anyway on their own, he was
And live the
probably
experience, right? Didn't just
right.
do a study, but live the experience. But yeah, go ahead.
Perhaps, yeah, right. Now I'm not talking about the culty people I grew up with, but I'm just saying in general,
Yeah.
you could do this with anything, right? You could be like, well,
Well, what I to
I don't
clarify,
want to go to the university. I want to study just on my own and figure this stuff out by myself. And you might not get that learned man education certificate, but you might still be wise.
yeah, it's like think about it. Would you if you had some problems and you wanted to talk to somebody, would you rather go to somebody who's a PhD who went to school and might have only like a couple years experience, or would you rather go to somebody like me or Sharon who have real world life experience and are both working on ourselves and are both working on not judging everything? So you could like think about you could talk to us and we would not even be judging you or trying, we'd be working. And if we did, we'd be like, oh yeah, that word focus. So, which would you rather go to the PhD? So that's another thing about that. And it doesn't mean that if you learn that stuff, like Sharon's example, she went crazy studying the Bible, which was amazing. And then she had this awakening, and now all that knowledge she can put to use. It also reminds me of like the prodigal son, right? So people might be saying, oh, you have to go to seminary school and do all this stuff and follow the line, right? But Jesus himself was talking about the prodigal son, and the one that went away and lost everything and came back was the one that was celebrated. Whereas the one who stayed there
And did all his daddy told him to do.
did everything he was supposed to, did not have a big party thrown for him. So, what is Jesus trying to say? Do you think Jesus would tell you to go to college? Did he go to, like, yeah, you could go study with people and stuff like that. I don't see anything wrong with that. But to have a
An
requirement that you
attachment
need
to a
this piece of
degree
paper,
or some, yeah.
yeah, and to have a requirement set as the bar of entrance for a position, you think about it, it goes back to what we were saying with the marketing. They want you to learn all the marketing lines and in their point of view, so you could take their point of view and teach it to other people to make it their point of view, right? So it's
Mm.
kind of more like the eloquent words are true and the or aren't true thing. And yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All
Let's see what
right.
else Dwight says about this. All right. So after that, he says, the wise man does not hoard, but ever working for others, he will the more exceedingly acquire. So, hey, that goes back to the line from Stephen Mitchell, where he says the master has no possessions. The more he does for others, the happier he is. And the more okay, so the next line that says, having given to others freely, he himself will have in plenty. And then Stephen Mitchell says, the more he gives to others, the wealthier he is. So pretty much saying basically the same thing with different words. And yeah, we've talked about attachments, So if you're a wise man, you're not hoarding all these attachments. And these could be physical attachments. These could be like emotional, mental, spiritual attachments too. Right.
Totally 100%. And I just had a whole like mind melt experience because a lot of conspiracy theorists who are afraid of Klaus Schwab are also Christians. And Jesus says the same thing that Klaus Schwab says. Jesus says, give up all your possessions and follow me. You'll have nothing to be happy. And so is Klaus Schwab.
Oh my God.
And that is Jesus Christ. He's the anti-Schwab. The anti-Schwab.
Oh my God.
All right. This is like the best conspiracy theory humor on the internet. I don't care what anyone says. Like if you know who Klaus Schwab is. All right. So true.
Yeah. So where were we? um, yeah, having given to others freely, he himself will have in plenty. So again, like Brandon was saying with the other verse, it's like the principle of giving. The more you give, the more you get, just because that's just how it works.
It's
it's
one of the
faith.
best ways to show gratitude. Sorry, I was yawning. That's why I want to bring it back. It's one of the best ways to show gratitude. And it's also one of the best ways to show that you have faith in God, in your higher self, and whatever is to just give it away and not worry about it. I'm not saying that you should do it, but I'm
Give
just saying
away your
that's
possessions and follow me. That's what Jesus said.
have nothing and be happy.
Or
That's what
sell
Klaus
it all.
Schwab said.
Have nothing in me.
That's what Klaus Schwab said.
Oh my God.
I love saying it right after you're like, that's what Jesus said.
Klaus,
And I'm like, that's
Santa
what,
Claus,
yeah.
Santa Claus Schwab.
Schwab, Charles Schwab. No. We'll
Ah,
do a we'll do like a mock thing where we break things down.
oh
That would be
my
so,
God.
yeah. Oh man. Uh,
All right. I
all
guess
right.
is it Klaus the German version of Charles?
Oh, is it?
I
Maybe.
don't
I was
know.
just no, I said Charles Schwab because it's maybe it's just around here, but it's an investing
Yeah,
firm that
yeah, I've
oh,
heard of
okay.
it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe. All right. I
I thought that
didn't know
was
if you didn't get that
interesting.
one or not. Okay. Sometimes, Sharon grew up under a
Santa
rock,
Claus
everybody.
Schwab.
So Santa Claus Schwab. Schwab. It's just Schwab the deck, matey. It's weird. Um, yes, as everybody that is a longtime fan of the show who knows, Sharon grew up under a rock because she was a heavy Christian upbringing, and I grew up under a crack rock because my parents were awesome and they liked to party. They didn't smoke crack, everybody. That's just a joke. But they did like to party. They were responsible parents, but I was party adjacent. So that's why we haven't said that one in a while. I just want to explain it for everybody.
Yeah.
I grew up under a crack rock.
Yes.
That's why I never smoked it because it was my shelter.
Oh
All
my God.
right.
All right, Dwight Goddard. Um, we're almost done, guys, here. Sorry for the lingering on this verse. It's just so good.
Oh, you're welcome, everybody, for the amazing
Yes,
commentary
yes,
and
you're welcome.
humor
Hmm.
to lighten your day. Where else are you gonna get this? Not on CNN or Fox News, I'll tell you that. All right, go ahead.
All right,
Sorry.
last piece of this verse from Dwight Goddard. Tao of heaven benefits but does not injure. The wise man's Tao leads him to act but not to quarrel. So that Tao of heaven benefits but does not injure is kind of paralleling the Stephen Mitchell translation that says the Tao nourishes by not forcing. Now he says by not forcing, so he's not doesn't the Tao doesn't force itself on you. And Dwight Goddard says it does not injure, so it doesn't try to harm you. So it gives you all these benefits, but it doesn't try to harm you. And then that last bit, the wise man's Tao leads him to act, but not to quarrel, just like we were talking about before that. Good men do not dispute. The ones who dispute are not good. That's quarreling, right?
There's something else hidden in there I see, which is I got it and then lost it and then got it. Don't tell me I lost it again. Yes, act. That's the word, right? They hide that in there. It leads him to act. So it's kind of negating this new age notion that you could just sit there and everything will be fine, right? It's like it leads him to act, not to quarrel, but to act.
It's
Right?
way, woo way, doing,
Yeah.
acting,
Yeah.
not doing.
Yeah.
It's still there's some action, but the action is in such a way that it's in line with nature.
It's
So that
action that you're
you're
not
flowing.
attached to.
Yeah.
Because if you're attached to it, then you're going to quarrel. Because a quarreling is also an action,
Um,
but it's attached action.
ooh, very good.
All right, cool.
Final stretch, guys, before we kind of wrap things up.
Stan Rosenthal from 1984, Breakdown Manifesting Simplicity, verse 81. The truth is not always beautiful, nor beautiful words the truth. So we can kind of, this is saying what the other ones are saying, so we can go through this, I think. Those who have virtue have no need of argument for its own sake. Now, this is a little different. And then he goes on to say, for they know that argument is of no avail. Now,
Mm.
okay, so he's saying what the other ones are saying, but adding a little more in there. So maybe he saw something more in there. And I like this whole own sake thing, right? So he's also saying the thing about action and non-action because he's not always saying that argument is wrong, right? But the need of argument for its own sake. And what is that really, argument for its own sake? What could he mean? What's going on when you're arguing with somebody, when you break it down? You're trying to get them to see your point of view and you're arguing, but could it be that you don't fully, truly believe in your own point of view? So you think if you make this guy believe it, you'll have some exterior validation and you'll feel a little bit better. You know, you're a little shaky about your point of view, but if I can convince this guy and he believes it, he's smart, maybe that's what's going on. So that's what the argument I think they're talking about. Whereas maybe there might be a time to have some kind of argument. You never know, a righteous argument, right? Um, so I see that, and then also he goes on to say, "For they know that argument is of no avail." So I like that because the wise man knows that you're not going to change anyone's mind. It's empty. Words are empty air, right? And you're just going to get them to hunker down further to prove their
Mm.
points. I mean, maybe you'll
Mm-hmm.
change someone's mind. It could happen, but you know,
But could it be that it comes from a different place?
and I just thought of this too. You're right. It comes from a different place, but if you do change someone's mind through an argument, how firm are they now then? Because
Right,
they only had their
right,
mind changed because
right.
maybe
That
they
too.
just,
I was thinking about that too.
yeah, maybe they feel bad, right?
Maybe
So
they're
they're just,
maybe they're floundering in their own views and they're just grabbing onto the next. They're serial conspiracy theorist believers.
yeah,
They'll just grab onto the next thing, perhaps.
could it
Because it's
be?
sensational.
Exactly. But either way, they're not going to be firmly rooted in this belief because they have no experience or knowledge, right?
Yeah.
So
Well,
I like how he added that. Go ahead.
yes. And it reminds me of people who would read all those magazines, those National Enquirer ones, by as you're walking through the checkout
The
cashier,
tabloids.
the tabloids. And like it was just like, but people would be like, they would like, if they were into that stuff, probably they would believe everything in there. They'd be like, oh, well, one day it's this, and the next day it's that, and another day it's this. And it's just like, well, what do you like? Why do you believe what they say? Well, why can't you? I mean, you could use that information as like, oh, okay, we'll see. Let's see what perspectives there are today to inform your view. But if you're like constantly serially believing every other tabloid, it's something to think about.
Or every news story.
Yeah,
Or
exactly.
everything you're told. Are you a
Exactly.
sheep? No. uh, all from that word argument. Okay. Um, so I'm going to start right here. Those who have knowledge of the natural way do not train themselves in cunning, whilst those who use cunning to rule their lives and the lives of others are not knowledgeable of the Tao.
Oh
This
my
kind of,
God.
right?
Cunning. Jeez. That
Marketing.
makes me think of marketing again. Exactly.
Yeah, it's all the same
Education.
message. Ocultare.
Oh
I'll
my
spare
God.
everybody.
Okay.
If you want to hear me sing that, you can go back a few episodes, everybody. I don't want to start that again because then I'll do it for a
You'll
week.
never stop. So those who have knowledge of the natural way do not train
Yeah.
themselves in cunning. Why would they have to? You know, go with the flow, go with go along with nature. Do you trust
Yes.
God? Do you trust the plan? Why do you have to like use your cunning and stuff to like maneuver and you know, what's another word? Um
Navigate
Yeah, I'm thinking of a manipulate, right?
yeah, oh
Manipulate
yeah.
how things are going to turn out or whatever, right?
Author the story. Why do you have to be the author? Same concept, but you're right. And again, this isn't they're not judgments. They're just letting you know that if this is what you're doing, this is where you are, right? That's how I'm taking
It's
this.
not in line with the Tao.
Yeah. So if you're suffering, it could be due to this. Maybe uh whatever you got to sell, maybe whatever you have for sale, sir, maybe you should make sure people actually need it and that you're not just creating this need for it in their life through brilliant marketing tactics.
Mm. I really hate those ones that send you to a website where they play a video, but they never tell you how long the video is. And the video could be like an hour. And you're just like waiting for them to give you the punchline, and they never give you the punchline until the very, very last minute. And then they're like, make you scroll and scroll and like, oh, add this to your cart. And how about this? Like, if you buy five, you'll get this. And if you do this, it's like, geez, it's freaking ridiculous. Like,
That's
do you,
why I love have you ever heard of System of a Down?
the band?
Yeah. That song they have Chicken Stew, I think it is. I'll look up the words real quick, then we'll move on because it'll be quick. But it's like that. I think that'll get me there. Yeah, here we go. Oh, come on, give me the lyrics. Oh, everybody wants to break it down. Okay, everybody. I think we get what it means. So, here it is. What is he's like? Ball games in the refrigerator, doors closed, lights are out, butter's getting hard. And he's like, "What a splendid pie, pizza, pizza pie, every minute, every second, pie, 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 pie. What a splendid pie, pizza, pizza pie." And he's like, "Every minute, every second, bye, 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 bye." So that's, and he's like, "You need therapy, therapy. Advertising causes need therapy, therapy. Advertising, I'm sorry, advertises, advertising causes need.
Hmm.
Advertising
Hmm.
causes need therapy,
Hmm.
therapy." Yeah, so. That's what that reminds me of. And you're right. Every minute, every second, buy, buy, buy. So you're on TV, they want you to buy things. And not only products, they want you to buy their way of life and stuff too, right? Like, so, and that goes along with what we've been talking about, a common theme here, watching television. Television in itself could it be, it's not evil. It's who you're
A
identifying with on the
tool, like
screen.
everything.
Yeah. Are you identifying with the main character and ups and downs? And just like we're talking about in the Tao in life, are you identifying with this all, or are you looking back and going, whoa, what a cool story. Look at how this
Yeah.
like
Are
guy's
you
life is turning
using
out.
it to inform your view of the
Yeah.
realm, or are you getting attached to it?
Yep. All
Back
right.
to the lecture at hand.
Back to the good thing we just started that in the last one because we would probably do it the whole time. All
I
righty,
never
everybody.
thought
Let's
to
see.
do it before.
Yeah. Okay, so we talked about the cunning in the lives of others, okay. Or not others, well. Nor
Okay, the sage seeks. Yeah.
yeah,
You
the
want
say
to say
okay,
something about
natural
that last
happiness.
bit? Are not knowledgeable of the down or head.
Oh yeah, I didn't read nor of natural happiness. So yeah, that's this is they're not aware of the natural happiness that comes with gratitude, being thankful for what you have and just going with the flow. They're more into this plastic happiness, like the everything's great, like that kind of happiness. We're gonna get wasted later, so we don't have to worry about what tomorrow, but everything's great. Um, you know. But again, that there's nothing wrong with that. It's fun sometimes.
You have to go through that sometimes.
Yeah.
Or maybe all of us have to go through it at least once in one
Yeah,
of
the
our
unnatural
lifetimes.
happiness is really the seeking the validation of others also, right? It's that you get happy from that too. So, uh, but the natural happiness is what we're looking for. Okay, the sage seeks right here not to have a store of things or knowledge, for he knows the less of these he has, the more he has, and that the more he gives, the greater his abundance.
Mm,
So, in a roundabout way, he's saying the same things that they've been saying in the last episodes, but this one he's saying like earthly
versus
things or knowledge.
translations.
Oh yeah, yeah, what it is. Yeah, translation, sorry, is the other. Yes. What do you think? I do like
Hmm.
the way he puts it though.
Yeah, no, I like that as well.
Well, I see it where his is more of an explanation kind of or like a
Yeah.
breakdown where the other ones are like a poetic
Yeah. State
station a
like
lot
a
of
little
times,
poetic
right?
statement. Yep.
All right, this
I
last
like
bit.
how he adds, like you said, I like how he adds the knowledge to things too. Because sometimes
Mm.
people are like, well, I knew and I've learned and I have a certificate of
Can I see
degree.
it? You mean the same one I can print right here on this? I'm just kidding, everybody. I would never.
I could print for myself and change the
I would,
name. I'm just kidding.
I would never. I don't. Yeah, my what are the credential? My credentials in my face. People see my face and they're like, oh yeah, this guy's cool. He looks like he died for our sins. Everybody. He looks like he has the same message as Klaus Schwab. You will own nothing and be happy.
It's funny that you say your credentials are your face because like I find lately that I never used to be necessarily bad at people's names. I was really pretty good because I would associate people by their first and last together. So I would I was pretty decent with people's names, but I feel like over time that's a little harder because I meet people online. I don't necessarily have two names to associate with them. Um and I don't necessarily see their faces or whatever. Or even if like watching a show like Cobra Kai or something, I'm always like, wait, what's her face? That girl, that one. And I'm just like, what's her name? Like I don't even remember. And Cody's over here like remembering all their names, and he's like, "Yeah, Amanda LaRusso," and I'm like, "Wait, Amanda? Oh, okay." Like I don't know what I'm like. I don't know what you're talking about. Oh
You
wait,
mean
okay,
the Amanda LaRusso? No, I'm just kidding. I don't even know who that is.
yeah. So, and I'm just like, wait, what's that girl's name, or what's that guy's name? I forget sometimes.
Yeah.
So
What's his face?
yeah, but I remember the faces. Like I know the face of the actor, and I know the part they're playing, but I can't remember the name.
Yeah, I'm
Ah,
the same way. Fortunately, I just accept it. But yeah, I'm getting better with remembering names in real life, though, which is nice.
oh, that's good.
IRL. IRL. All right.
Mm, 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 mm.
The last little bit here. The way of the sage is pointed, but does not harm. The way of the sage is to work without cunning. So it's pointed, so you're dealing with truth, right? It's sharp. It might hurt. I mean, it has the ability to hurt like any tool, but the sage realizes this, and he doesn't use the truth to hurt people in a way. And when we say hurt, it could just mean wake them up from the dream, right? We try to woke rape them. There's all these terms that we use. Uh, yeah,
It's crazy. You know how we're talking about we want to do an episode on truth. Um, he just said the way the sage is pointed, and you said truth, right? I'm just like, wow, doesn't the Bible say that it's like a two-edged sword, like sharp
yeah,
and pointed, right?
yeah. Oh wow.
Anyway, I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah, the way of the sage is the way of truth according to the Bible then, but he doesn't harm, right?
And that's like God. God's not trying to harm you. You know, not all Christians believe that.
How dare you?
I mean, I don't know. I just assume because I grew up in it that like if people think that God can send people to hell, like they must believe that he is okay
Yeah,
punishing them. You know what I mean? Like it's like a cognitive dissonance if people are like, "No, but it just it's he still loves you." Yeah, it's I don't know.
it's
Anyway,
yeah,
it's
and it's only from our limited mortal point of view
perspective. Yeah.
perspective. That's the word. It's only from our limited perspective that we're being harmed by God. From God's perspective, he's not harming us.
Yeah. We're
It's,
harming ourselves. We
mm,
we do it to ourselves. It's
exactly.
karma, y'all.
Exactly.
It's the law of what is that? What is the Kybalion? What would the Kybalion say that is? Cause and
Well,
effect,
oh,
right?
yeah, the law of cause and effect. Yes, yes.
All right. I can read Aleister
Mm.
Crowley's from 1918. Final verse, guys, and then we'll kind of talk about wrapping this up. So here we go. The showing forth of simplicity. True speech is not elegant. Elaborate speech is not truth. All right, we've talked about elegantness, about about beauty, truth being beauty, truth being elegant, truth being eloquent, and
Yeah.
and truth being pleasant. So these are all words that they've all used. Um, those who know makes me think of don't speak. Those who know do not argue. Well, when you
Right.
speak, is it because you're trying to argue? um, right? Because if
Could
someone's
be.
like brings up a point and in your mind you're like, I don't agree, I don't agree. But are you gonna say it, or are you just gonna let them just believe what they want to believe? Because you know that you can't convince someone who's already, you know, stuck in their ways and beliefs. The argumentative are without knowledge. Could we say? Wow.
Hmm.
That's a big claim there, right?
Yeah, the
You know,
argumentative. I like that too.
Can you like, okay, so just like thinking about people out there and the like I always think of people who are like online who are trying to debunk and who are trying to like debate and all this stuff. And I'm just like, that really, really shows
Oh, like the comment section warriors.
a lot of immaturity, right?
Yeah, it's so crazy. And it goes with what this whole verse is about. Like, you're not going to change someone's mind, especially from a comment section. I mean, and I'm guilty. I used to do that stuff. It's like, no, but if you could just see, but if they just see, then they'll know because I know. And if I know, I must be right. And if they don't, then maybe I'm not right. So I must convince them that I'm right so I can feel better about myself. So,
Yeah.
that's what you're going to see a lot right now on social media. But um, Alistair's like, nope. And he uses the word argumentative, which I like because he's not, it's like a whole attitude frame of mind, right? It's a whole, are you argumentative? What are you so worried about, bro?
Like, why are you always trying to debate people? Why are you always trying to cause an argument, start an argument?
Don't
There's
start
something,
none, there won't be
there's
none.
something, when you're pointing the finger, Brandon, how many fingers you got pointing back at yourself?
At least three,
Indeed.
depending on how you position your thumb. And if
Most
the
of the
thumb is
time, yeah,
really a finger or
the
not.
thumb cannot go backwards though. So
Ah, you see?
oh,
Like, what if I was,
only three. At least mine can't. I don't have that
there you go.
opposable thumb that
I
like
got,
some people's thumbs can go back like this way and do like it. Mine can't do that. But
you
yeah.
got three fingers pointed back unless you're double jointed. And consider the thumb a finger. And if you don't, then you just got three. But if you fall into one of those categories, you could have four. So be careful with pointing your finger.
Yeah.
That's the message of the day today. Um,
So back
yeah,
to
I'll bring it
Aleister
back up.
Crowley, unless there was something else you wanted.
Nope, that's good.
Angela Baby Carson is double jointed in her thumbs, she
There you
says.
go. Better watch out then, Angela Baby Carson. You point the finger, you have
You
possibly
might have
four.
four pointing back at
If
you.
you consider the thumb a finger, that's another.
True, true.
You could say if you point one digit, when you point your digit at somebody, you possibly will have four pointing back there. That's an accurate statement. So,
Phalanges.
yeah.
All right. Well,
All right.
we'll stop with the synonyms and definitions. Um, those who have assimilated are not learned. All right. So assimilated to what? What is Alistair saying here? Those who are gross with learning have not assimilated. You want to tell me what you think about that? To
I
assimilated to the Tao?
I would say like an inner kind of assimilation, like an inner peace because of this coming together and harmonizing of different parts of ourselves and accepting them, right? Instead of fighting against them. So that's a kind of assimilation that we could talk about. Um, Here, let me look at it again. That's the
Those who
first
are
thing that,
gross with learning, oh, sorry, those who have assimilated are not learned.
and then also assimilated, you could say assimilated like with the knowledge, I guess. We could look it up with the word assimilated, but you could also say, how we were saying you have to do things and get a knowing of it. That's when the knowledge or whatever the wisdom gets assimilated. Whereas if you're learning, you could just learn all day, like you could read a book. But let me look up assimilate just for the heck of it. Does that
I
make
feel like
any?
the connotation of assimilate is to approximate in closeness to whatever you're getting close to,
Oh, I could be wrong. Yeah,
I think.
Oh, assimilate to consume and incorporate nutrients into the body after digestion to transform. Okay, yeah, so that's kind of what I was talking about. So like
To
to
take in.
incorporate or to transform, like so you think of a butterfly, or what it says to transform food into living tissue by the process of anabolism, metabolize constructively to incorporate and absorb into the mind. Oh, there we go. Assimilate knowledge. That, yeah. So to truly incorporate and absorb this information in your mind That's how the wise men do it, right? They truly, whereas opposed to the learned man, he just reads about it and gets these ideas and tries to figure it out that way, where the wise man takes the action. And that's why
Mm.
it's assimilated.
So the assimilated is the good thing, right?
Yeah.
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 Okay, yeah. So those who have assimilated all this stuff, all this wisdom, shall we say, they're not considered learned because, you would like, let's just say that they're considered wise men, right? They would probably, like, by normie standard people, they'd be like, oh, that's a crazy over there, right? Those would be the people who have assimilated. But
It's
those who
like
are
okay.
gross with learning, those who have, think they learned it all, they have not assimilated the true knowledge or whatever, right? Or the true wisdom.
Here's it's like an architect versus somebody who builds the house, right? The architect is the learned one. Now, there's nothing wrong with the architect in this scenario. You need an architect, but just so the architect deals with concepts and stuff and drawing, whereas the contractor or whatever actually goes out and builds the house, gets the knowledge of it and knows it in his bones. He's put stuff together before. So it's kind of like that stuff, or like an engineer versus like somebody who would actually build what the engineer designed. So
I
yeah.
think so. Yeah.
But in this case, though, the learned we're talking about a clash between the two, right? So a normal like an architect with a contractor or like a engineer with somebody who's gonna there's a cohesive beneficial relationship. But now we're talking about an argument, right? Or some kind of butting heads of these two ways of thinking or whatever, right? So they're saying that the person who's up there saying they're learned and knows all this information, has all the degrees, never stepped foot into the real world and actually,
Mm,
they're talking about Dark
mm,
Nights of the Soul, but they never been on the floor crying and laughing and, like or whatever your experience was.
mm. Yeah. Well, I can keep reading. Back to the lecture at hand.
Back. Go ahead.
The wise man, and I'm going to read it in like standard English. The rest of this is going to be, the wise man does not hoard. The more he gives, the more he has. The more he waters, the more he is watered himself. So we talked about that. The
Yep.
other verses and translations say it a little differently, but pretty much the same meaning. The Tao of heaven is like an arrow, yet it woundeth not. Wow. Okay. So Stan Rosenthal says pointed. The way of the sage is pointed. The Tao of heaven is like an arrow, says Aleister Crowley, yet it woundeth not. So it's same meaning. It doesn't harm. And the wise man in all his works makes no contention. So contention is argumentative, being argumentative, being, disagreeable. I disagree with you. I don't agree. That's contention. But the wise man does not make contention.
In the wise man and all his works, right? So if you're going to write a book trying to point out what's wrong with society or whatever, right? He's saying that you don't do, he's like, no, you're not, you're just content. Oh, or no, you don't no contention. There you go. So you just do art, you just make something beautiful for people to look at. And then you're in that same way, you're leading by example.
Indeed. So we
We did
finished
it.
verse 81, but
Yeah.
I wanted to just kind of tie up some loose ends from the first intro episode we did, where we first started to read through all the intros, almost all of them. I think we only read 3 of them, of the Tao Te Ching versions that we read. And the one that stumped me the most was Aleister Crowley's. Of course it would. And we'll get into that in a second, but I wanted to just share a couple of things that I found in my studies and my studying of, because as some of you might know, I started to try to make my own interpretation. And I say interpretation because I don't read or speak or know Chinese. So I can only take from what other translations have said and kind of like we did in the show for these. How many episodes did we do, Brandon?
44?
45.
Oh,
44
yeah.
44 total commentaries and one intro. So a total of 45 episodes dedicated to this Tao series. And wow, it was a lot. It was a lot of stuff. But I wanted to kind of take that information and see if I could make a translation for myself. And I don't know if it'll ever get done completely because I've only done verse 1 still. But I wanted to kind of know, okay, what are all these words mean? The Tao, the Day, the Jing. What do these words mean? So I started looking things up. I found a couple of websites. There's one called Tao in You, Tao-in-u.com. And these are linked in the description. But I was reading through some of these and I found a couple of different things that helped me kind of comprehend it a little bit better. And so I will tell you a little bit of what those say. So I don't have to open the pages because I have some notes. So I'm just going to tell you what I learned. So the
Let's do it.
Tao, what?
I was like, let's do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So the Tao, according to this website that I share, that I said is linked in the description, the Tao represents the natural order or the underlying principles of the universe. And what this reminded me of is because I recently was looking into this is it's what not that I didn't know this necessarily before, but I kind of didn't, even though I was Christian, I always heard the logos, but I never knew like what what that meant. I just kind of was like, it was the interpretation or the word used for word, in the beginning was the word, and the word was with God and the word was God, right? And that's in First John or in John 1.
John, I think. Yeah.
John 1, I think. And I just was, I knew that the Greek version said logos, but I was just like, okay, whatever. I guess the word logos means word, but the word logos in Greek actually means other things too. It can mean like reason, but it's interesting because the Tao also can be translated as reason, or has been in some cases translated as
Are you
reason.
telling me the Apostle John was a Taoist? No.
I'm telling you that Christians are Taoists at heart. Like it's really, really crazy how the similarities are. So anyway, the Tao represents this like natural order underlying principle of the universe. And that's what the word logos means to Christian people. But even more so, I found interesting is that it came from Heraclitus. That's to me was quite interesting. And so I will open those and read from them so you can see what I'm talking about because
All right.
it was very, very enlightening to me. Did not know this. So let me find that. Okay. So can y'all see that okay?
Looks good on my end.
All right. Maybe I can stretch it a little bit more. All right. So Heraclitus was a Greek philosopher of the late 6th century BCE. He criticizes his predecessors and contemporaries for their failure to see the unity in experience. He claims to announce an everlasting word, logos, according to which all things are one in some sense. Opposites are necessary for life, but they are unified in a system of balanced exchanges. The world itself consists of a law-like interchange of elements symbolized by fire. Thus, the world is not to be identified with any particular substance, but rather with an ongoing process governed by a law of change. The underlying law of nature also manifests itself as a moral law for human beings. Period. Heraclitus is the first Western philosopher to go beyond physical theory in search of metaphysical foundations and moral applications. I did not know this. I mean,
He was the first non-materialist. Well, that we're, not the first, but the first we're allowed to know about.
perhaps, well, in the Western world, right? Because the
Yeah, yeah.
Taoists were already talking about this with the Tao. And when was the Tao written? I forgot.
Oh,
Mm.
yeah. Good question. I should know that. Yeah, I like that's crazy. Also, it's like, all right, Heraclitus, what are you, a dirty hippie? We were
Okay,
all
this is
one, like
okay. This is nuts. Okay, so it says traditionally attributed to Lao Tzu and believed to have been written around the 6th century BCE. That's when Heraclitus was around. That's nuts. But okay, so another website says consensus suggests it was written around 400 BCE or yeah, BC, sorry, whatever. Which one's which? I don't care. Um so if it was 600, then he and like Lao Tzu and Heraclitus were contemporaries, but probably wouldn't have known of each other, right? But this information would have come out at the same time to the world. Interesting, huh?
yeah, and where did they get it from? Maybe the same source, right? And they
Yeah.
were just disseminating it to their own people, putting it into words that their people could understand. Maybe there was, I don't know, a catastrophe or something, like
Yeah. Maybe the law of one type stuff, like they contacted and gave some information and then who knows.
yeah, or
Um
maybe it was even passed down from a prior civilization.
yeah.
Oh, so
So
interesting.
yeah, so let me read a little bit more on Heraclitus from a different website so you guys can, and I shared all these links in the description so you guys can read them for
Shout out to
yourselves.
Sharon, everybody, for being so astute with her links in there and keeping such good order to giving such good order to the Oversharon show dynamics.
Thank you. All right, so in this link it says it's entitled Heraclitus and the Birth of the Logos. So the birth of, in other words, Heraclitus was the first guy to use this terminology in this way to describe things. Okay. This is a chapter reproduced with kind permission from the forthcoming work, blah, 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 blah. Okay. In this guest piece read about Heraclitus, the first Greek to place such attention on the idea of the logos, or the, here it is, rational underlying structure of the universe, a concept which later underpinned the practice of ancient Stoicism. Interesting, right? One of the great philosophers before Socrates and Plato, Heraclitus was the eldest son of the leading family of Ephesus, one of the main cities of the ancient Greek world and famous for its temple of Artemis. We do not know a huge amount about Heraclitus, except that he avoided involvement in politics. He was something of a loner, and at a time when it was normal for philosophers to play a part in politics and communicate their ideas in speech, he focused on the written word. As a result, his thoughts survived him, and his book of sayings became famous in the ancient world. Plato and others discussed him, but his influence was greatest among the Stoics, which is interesting. Quite. The famous Stoic I know about is Marcus Aurelius, and he was around in like the 100s of the BC. So this was much like he was around much later. So this influenced Stoicism, interestingly enough. The fragments are a collection of sayings and statements covering the nature of the physical universe. Of the physical universe, ethics, and politics. But it is Heraclitus's metaphysical ideas that have retained their power. The Logos. The book begins with this statement. Although this Logos is eternally valid, yet men are unable to understand it.
What?
Not only before hearing it, but even after they have heard it for the first time. Though all things come to pass in accordance with this Logos, men seem to be quite without any experience of it. My own method is to distinguish each thing according to its nature and to specify how it behaves. Other men, on the contrary, are as forgetful and heedless in their waking moments of what is going on around and within them as they are during sleep. What does Heraclitus mean by logos? The literal Greek translation is word, as in, in the beginning was the word, in the beginning was logos. And it is sometimes rendered as account. Interesting. He is saying that what follows in the book is an account of something timeless and truthful, an unseen force, not that different from the biblical word or the Tao in Taoism, which regulates and runs the universe. Wow. So it's funny because when I was looking up like what logos meant some months ago, I was like, it's pretty much the nature of or the natural order of things. And I'm like, isn't that what the Tao is? What isn't that? Is logos basically saying that's what the Tao is? Like they're the same, just different words from different countries.
So is Heraclitus just interpreting the Tao? Because it seems to me that his
Right?
opening statement is just like it's another translation of the first verse.
Right? Let me see if this
Which
is
is funny because I wanted to cover the first verse again, but we just did. You just read it.
that's
That
funny.
that's the first verse just written for the Greeks in that time.
I'm just going to read this last one because I don't remember if it's useful or not. But anyway,
Yeah,
humans
yeah.
can only act in a right way if their actions are in attunement with the logos. Isn't that what the Tao says? With the Tao, with the creative principle of the universe, the natural order of things, right? Most people, however, do not understand it, even if it is the force that regulates their lives. Whoever thinks that they have a separate mind and manage themselves as if they are an isolated kingdom is fooling themselves. They believe their own opinions instead of seeing things in their true light. Thinking, Heraclitus says, is shared by all. Ultimately, we are all of the same mind. Staying blind to this fact is the cause of our suffering. Boom.
Wow.
Very interessant.
I would say that's very interesting because the whole Christian, it seems that what the Romans did with Christianity was just take this message and this figure of Christ who had the message and create an idol worship religion out of it. But it's the same. See, guys, we've been saying this the whole time.
Dude. All right, I'm going to read one more little one or two more paragraphs from a different page, just for emphasis because and I found these just by looking up something really quick yesterday and I was like, okay, these are useful. I'm going to have to read these. All right, Heraclitus, the philosopher of change and the logos. Heraclitus of Ephesus, circa, here it is, 535 to 475 BCE, stands as one of the most enigmatic and influential figures of early Greek philosophy. Known as the philosopher of flux, here you go, interestingly enough, everything flows. What? Wei wu wei, go with the natural order of things, go with the Tao.
Known as the
Heraclitus,
Taoist philosopher. Oh,
right? As the Western Taoist philosopher.
yeah.
Heraclitus developed a vision of reality grounded in the principles of perpetual change, opposition, and unity. Also reminds me of the Hermetic principles of the Kybalion, basically, as well. His aphoristic and often cryptic statements, many of which survive only as fragments, challenge conventional thinking and emphasize the dynamic interplay of order and chaos, the finite and the infinite. These cryptic statements where it says that, it makes me think of those, what you would call them, koan from the Zen philosophy, the
Yeah.
Zen, right?
Yep.
That make you think, right?
Yeah. And
Um,
the when they say cryptic statements, it also probably talks about the paradoxes, points to those
yes, like
paradoxes that we often see.
in the Tao. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Which, they're probably, those are kind of like koans too.
Yeah.
Um, let's see. Central to Heraclitus' thought is the concept of the logos, reason, word, or principle. See how it can be translated as these three words, right? Which he saw as the underlying structure of the cosmos governing its constant transformations. The Tao,
The diggity dow. How do you like me now? Wow, that's crazy.
right? Heraclitus' ideas have had a profound impact on the development of Western philosophy, influencing thinkers from the Stoics and Neoplatonists to modern existentialists and process philosophers. By examining his metaphysical, cosmological, and ethical insights, we gain a deeper understanding of his revolutionary contributions to the history of thought. So,
What do
mind
you
blown.
know?
Mind blown.
All I know is that I would not want to be a Neoplatonist just because of that label. Like, are you a Neoplatonist? I'm like, no, I believe exactly what they believe, but I'm not a fucking Neoplatonist. I feel like I'm gonna go to jail for that, like, what are you in jail for?
No, I'm a
Neoplatonism.
Taoist.
Neoplatonism. It just sounds all right.
Bad.
Yeah, like I don't, it sounds like creepy too. Like I don't even know, like
That's
this
funny.
guy's a pedophile, but this guy's a Neoplatonist. He's
Oh
into
my God.
Neoplatonism. All right. Anyway,
Yeah. So that can I continue?
please, yeah, please save me.
Sorry.
No,
Um,
no.
so this guy, John Minford, does a different translation of the Tao, which um I haven't listened to all of it, but I did listen to the audiobook intro. And then I went to the ebook and I was like looking out what he said because I was like, whoa, I need to copy paste this and quote it. Um, so this is from his John Minford's translation of the Tao, and I will read what he said about it. Another old and fundamental meaning of the word Tao is to tell, to verbalize, to find
Oh,
words for, or to find words for ideas, somewhat akin to the logos of early Western philosophy.
yeah, it's somewhat akin. It's not exactly the same fucking thing, right? Yeah,
It's
get out
pretty
of here.
much freaking identical.
Somewhat akin. Get out of here
Yeah.
with your somewhat.
Hence the wordplay of the book's opening line, the Tao that can be verbalized or dowed, the Tao that can be dowed, worded, phrased, verbalized, is not the true Tao, right?
It's
And then
somewhat
he
akin.
he also points out that according to Joseph Needham, um, who is this guy? He's just this guy. I'm just kidding. Tao is the order of nature which brought all things into existence and governs their every action, not so much by force as by a kind of natural curvature in space and time. It reminds us of the logos of Heraclitus. Dude, I was like coming across these things like, and I'm like, wait, what? This is correct. It was like so synchronistic. It was,
That is crazy.
yeah.
It's like they're like, well, Heraclitus, Lao Tzu says tomato, but Heraclitus, he says tomato. So
Tomato.
we
I
gotta,
mean, they're akin, but they're not the
they're
same.
akin, but Heraclitus is talking about tomatoes, okay? And Lao Tzu is talking about tomatoes. There's a slight difference
There's a slight difference in the spelling and the word,
just in the sound and the
in the
feeling you get when
pronunciation
you
and the
hear
sound.
tomato. It just sounds fancy, you think you're gonna get a special sandwich. Yeah, he's was saying it to a Greek audience that can hear it, and that's how he packaged it. And Lao Tzu was like, "Hey, I got this message, Chinese people or whatever, here you go in this cultural, yeah, I'll interpret it in a way you can understand. Same freaking message, so that's great.
Right?
That's cool. It's a little mystery unlocked. See, you guys, watch the Oversharing show. You never know what mysteries might be
What you
unlocked.
gonna get?
That's right.
Like
We're
a box of
unlocking
chocolates. So just to continue with
box
our
of chocolate.
translation thing, the day, according to those two websites I provided on what is the Tao or Tao and You, sorry, Tao and You. The day refers to, now we talked about it as like virtue, right? But there's like more nuance to it, right? So they say that it can be like the application or the manifestation of the Tao, or the virtuous qualities and actions that are in accord with the Tao. Now, I was speaking about John Minford earlier in his translation. Now, he says that day can be translated also as like power, like energy. And he describes all these people who translated it in different ways, like a latent power, an inherent virtue, a magical life force, a gentle source of strength. I like that last one, a gentle source of strength, because it's like it makes more sense to me.
It reminds me of like potential energy.
Yes. Yes. I love that. I'm going to write that down.
Thank you.
Potential energy. Yes. Um, and then he says the Taoist tunes into this life force, which operates and emanates without conscious effort. And I think of Wei Wu Wei, right?
All the
And
way.
he says it can also be called, or it also has been called, the power of the infinite, or sorry, of the infant. Pardon my little slip of the tongue there. The power of not contending, what we've been talking about. The power of non-action, right? Which is the Wu Wei. Or yeah. So because of this, he calls the book the Tao and the power.
Wow.
Interesting, right?
Yeah. Interesting.
So the word Qing or
Mhm.
Jing, however you pronounce it in Chinese, it can be translated as like scripture or a classic, like so like a scripture text, right? Or a classic text. So you could, if you wanted, translate it as something like the scripture of the natural order of the universe and its inherent virtuous qualities and strength, right? So what he
Yeah.
boils it down to, or actually I think it's the Tao and You website boils it down to, is that Lao Tzu wanted us to abide by the laws of the universe rather than those set out by men. And when you think about it, it's like letting nature take over. That's how you Wei Wu Wei, right?
That's the way to way.
Yeah. I do have one more point to make about the Aleister Crowley version. Do you have time for that?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So when we read the intro to Aleister Crowley's version, he talked about this concept of, or what's interesting is that he mentioned three ways that the Tao, the word Tao, has been interpreted. And it was confusing to me. One of them was confusing to me, and I'll explain why. But let me bring it up for you so you can see. Where is it?
I'll take this time to do a commercial. Go to morelawsmoreproblems.com, everybody. Click on the Over Sharon tab, and there's several ways to support us. And you can also find our podcast in audio form wherever your favorite, wherever you get podcasts. But if you go to morelawsmoreproblems.com, click on the Over Sharon tab, you'll be pointed in those ways. And yeah, best way to support us is to be here every Thursday when we either go live or premiere an episode and hang out in the chat with us. So thank you guys. Shout out to the chat, by the way. Thank you guys for hanging around all the way to the end. Amazing as
I'm
always.
almost done.
Our average view duration is
What?
28 minutes. Means a lot of people are
Oh,
watching
good.
the whole thing. Yeah,
Nice.
it's pretty high.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm bringing up what I brought up during our very first episode on the Tao. And I wanted to point out, okay, so starting here, he says, the very first word Tao presented a completely insoluble problem. This is when he was trying to translate it. He was talking about it had been translated, and he doesn't say by whom. Okay, so that's why it was kind of confusing to me too, because I couldn't find why it had been translated this way right here. So he said it had been translated reason, the way, and this is not English. It's Greek. It's on, I'm guessing is how you pronounce it. But in English, it looks like it says to on, T-O space O-N. And then he says, none of these convey the faintest conception of the Tao. So he doesn't even agree that these are the best ways to translate the Tao. Okay. And mind you, I have no idea, or you know what, it might be, I think I remember, I think it was Plato or Aristotle or something who I guess had translated Tao as this. And I would have to dig into more of that because it was a lot of digging to even get that much info on this. The Tao is reason in this. Okay, so he talks about why it was translated as reason, and then he talked about why it was translated as way. But I wanted to read about why it was translated as this do on or to on that it seems to say here. So as for do on, which superficially might seem the best translation of Tao as described in the text, it is the most misleading of the three. For do on possesses an extensive connotation, implying a whole system of Platonic concepts than which nothing can be more alien to the essential quality of the Tao. And I will, here, let me just stop and tell
So
you.
basically, go
Go
ahead,
ahead.
go ahead. I'm gonna say what I'm seeing here is basically they're saying that this Tuan version of looking at what Tao can mean, this way of looking at it, is more of a limited, looking at it from a limited point of view, or just a way that maybe people in that society from the Plutonic, those Neoplatonists, whatever. But no, the Greeks of that day is something they would understand. So it's like their worldview, you're looking at it for it to mean that, which, it's a different concept than just that.
Yeah.
I guess, yeah.
So, and here's why. So when I finally looked all this up, because it was so difficult to look up because I was like, imagine looking up T-O space O-N. Like it looks like English. So, and I don't know how to write it in Greek. You know what I mean? I was like at a loss for how to look this up. Somehow, this was months ago that I did this, but somehow I came across this information and then I realized it was Plato or something like. So I found more stuff, and I realized it was Greek because at first I didn't know it was Greek. He doesn't even say it that it's Greek, So it was all Greek to me.
All Greek.
But anyway, so do on in Greek means or can mean, like being or beingness, or what is, or that which is, or what it is to be. So, like the sense of being, that's what doon means. So, when he says, and let me share this really quick again. So, and here's the other problem that I had was TOMHON. This was a typo because whatever software was like doing the OCR for this old document probably translated this or like picked it up as MH and it's actually ME.
Oh,
So it's still me on. And maybe it looked like a sigma. You know what I mean?
yeah. Oh, yeah. Yep. Yep. So they did it as an H. Yeah.
Or something. I don't know. But anyway, so this, okay, so I'll just keep reading a little bit. Tao is neither being or not being. So see, do on means being or
Yeah.
not being, which is this. Do me on is the not being part. In any sense which Europe could understand, it is neither existence nor a condition or form of existence. At the same time, do me on gives no idea of Tao. Tao is altogether alien to all that class of thought. From its connection with that principle, which necessarily underlies the fact that events occur, one might suppose that the becoming, and he mentions Heraclitus too,
Wow.
the becoming of Heraclitus might assist us to describe the Tao. Now, I don't know what he means by the becoming of Heraclitus. He didn't say logos, so I'm not sure.
Try
But
Googling just becoming of Heraclite, like that phrase. Maybe it's because it could be a principle that he is famous for or something. I thinking something like that.
yeah, it could be, which I didn't have a chance to look up. Um, Heraclitus, a pre-Socratic philosopher, is known for his concept of becoming, emphasizing the constant flux and change. Oh, the constant flux and change of the universe. It's constantly becoming.
Okay. Oh, there we go. Okay.
That famously expressed as panta re, everything flows. That's what we were reading
Yep.
earlier.
Okay.
And you cannot step twice into the same river, which you've quoted before.
Yep.
Okay,
So
so
I go
that's
ahead. Yep.
you go ahead, say something.
I was just gonna say, so then you take that and then read this again from its connection with that principle, which necessarily underlies the fact that events occur. One might suppose that the becoming of Heraclitus might assist us to describe the Tao, but the Tao is not a principle at all of that kind. Yeah, so that this is where they're trying to make the distinction, and I think they're trying to say that he's not a Taoist or what he's saying isn't Taoist, but
It's as
uh
close as it can get, probably,
yeah,
maybe.
what I feel is it's because I also think they're right because he's describing it to a Greek audience,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whereas Lao Tzu was describing it to a Chinese audience or for whatever
Exactly.
or another they could understand. So you're right, Heraclitus isn't a Taoist, and they didn't have, but could it be they're working off the same text though,
Who
So
knows?
maybe Heraclitus didn't have the Tao, but Lao Tzu and Heraclitus might have been working off the same information, like the same
And trying to
principles.
put it into words for the people of their time.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, this is interesting. To understand it requires an altogether different state of mind to any which with which European thinkers in general are familiar. It is necessary to pursue unflinchingly the path of spiritual development on the lines indicated by the Sufis, the Hindus, and the Buddhists. And having reached the trance of Nirodha Samapati, in which are destroyed all forms soever of consciousness. So he's kind of he feels the whole like Eastern uh thought a little. I don't know, he kind of favors the Eastern thought a little bit more. Um, but still,
And he even says it though in without realizing what he's saying. He's saying that the Europeans didn't have a concept of nothingness or whatever, like they do. So of course that's why you can't bring them a message that contains it because they wouldn't understand it. So this thing is probably being used as an argument as to why Heraclitus and the Tao aren't the same thing. Which, yeah, you're
Right.
right, they're not. But could they
But
be
they
from
are.
this? Well, but could they be from the same source material though? That, so yeah, well, what I'm saying is you could say with truth that it's not the same thing because it's not the same exact message because Heraclitus left out all this non-being stuff. Or you could be like, well, but yeah, but are they from the same source material? Like,
Yeah.
and that's why when you hear an article or someone's like, oh, they're not the same thing, I proved it. You're like, okay, no, you have to go in and see why they say it's not the same thing. There's nuances here. Yeah, they're right, but you know, so
But yet we're all one.
exactly.
And
And
like
that's
the Kybalion says, all is sorry, the all is in all and all is in the all. Right? Something like that.
yeah. And let's talk about this concept of non-existence. Yeah, it could be a thing where, but it might not be essential to spiritual growth, or maybe it was something introduced to try to control Chinese people more. Who knows, why the concept isn't grasped, but I don't feel like it's a huge thing that you'd have to make a point of contention on because at the end of the day, if you're a Taoist or if you're a Heraclitusist, if you're following either of what they're saying, you're pretty much living the same life. You might just think that different things and have a different way to argue your point about what this realm is, right?
But
You
if
have a
you really are wise to those things, would you argue with a Taoist? Would a
exactly.
Heraclitan argue with a Taoist?
Yeah, exactly. And this is another example of the learned or the scholarly going in without any actual experience of what they're talking about. It's just what they learned and what they read about it. So I think experientially, if you follow the Tao, or if you live according like to Heraclitus and listen to what he said, you're gonna have the same outlook, and the same experiences and stuff like that. So you'll see it. But if you're someone who's just studying it and reading it and not putting the principles into your life, you're not gonna see it. You're gonna only see the differences.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I love it. So on that note, um, I wanted to read a quote from Crowley that is in that same intro as a final message.
All right, let's do
So
it.
it says, it must, however, be laid to heart that the essence of his system will inevitably elude intellectual apprehension unless it be illuminated from above by actual living experience of the truth.
Yes. So you
And I
have to
mean,
walk the walk.
yeah. And like, it's almost like reminds me of what Jesus would say about like the Holy Spirit reveals it to you, right?
Yeah, that's why we keep saying debating about this stuff. You really don't go anywhere. Just going in circles.
And Gnostics talk about like that in like the knowing, like the inner knowing from experience, right?
Yep. From above or within. As above, so below, as within, so without. You get there.
I want to
All
talk
right.
about the Kybalion soon. I want to do deep dive. We can read it and stuff, so that'll be fun.
Yeah, that sounds great. All right. Well, anything going on in the chat? My chat's acting wonky. Uh,
9 people.
what's up, everybody? Thank you guys for hanging out all the way here to the end. And I'm gonna have to go outside and walk around. I need to get grounded. I feel like after doing this and the reading today, I'm just like,
Get grounded.
yes, I'm gonna go walk outside. It's sunny out there too. I'll go be an antenna. All right, everybody. Well, thanks again for sticking around to the end. Shout out to the chat. Make sure you guys come hang out every Thursday when you can with us. in the chat or yeah, in the chat. Come hang out, subscribe, thumbs up, all that fun stuff. More laws, more problems is the website. Overshare and tab. Click on that to support us. And what do we say to the good people, Sharon?
That once you start oversharing.
Then you totally stop over Karen.
That's right.
And remember, everybody, we're not trying to tell you how to live your life.
We're just sharing the Tao and, shall we say, the logos or the logos with you, so you can decide if you want to live according to the natural order of the universe.
That's right, everybody. And have a great weekend. Until next week, keep oversharing. We'll see you later. Take care.
Ciao.
Ciao. We're done.
Dude, you broke up
I
at the very
think.
end, so thank God it
All right,
wasn't
yeah, we're
during
done.
this thing.
Loved it.
You were frozen for